Oh hi, thanks for watching my video. I thought today we would have a chat about the Sims 4 base game. The Sims 4 has been around for 8 years, and over that time we've had multiple updates to improve gameplay. I think if we were still looking at the state of base game when it was launched, I'm pretty sure we would all agree that it was a shit show and was absolutely not worth the asking price. I'm not going to go into too much detail about what we did have in base game at the point of launch, because I did cover that in a video where I spoke about the evolution of base game. However, in a nutshell, it looked like it had the interface of a mobile game, the world map was incredibly uninspiring, several features were missing, and to say that The Sims 4 was not as good as the earlier games would have been quite an understatement. But now we're 8 years on and several changes have been made, and it got me thinking, is The Sims 4 base game worth buying today? Does it have enough gameplay to enjoy without buying add-on content? Well, right now I don't really know, so I thought I'd make a video where we would look at what we now have in base game and answer that question. As I touched on earlier, I did make a video very similar to this one about 9 months ago, and I determined that the base game was not worth it. I was on the fence about making this video because I just didn't want to repeat myself, but since that video 9 months ago, we have had quite a lot of content added in updates. So I decided to look at this again with a fresh perspective, and I'll try not to talk too much about the stuff I'd already covered in that video. So let's begin. Starting off with sim customization. I think Creator Sim was already quite good in terms of dragging Sims' body features, but over the updates we've had a few new features added too, like body hair, more skin tones, nails, pronouns and sexual preferences. I think overall The Sims 4 has pretty good customization, however the lack of colour wheel really lets them down. If The Sims 4 had come immediately after The Sims 2, I'd say it was the best customization we've ever had. But despite being able to mould Sims' bodies and faces easier than ever, it still lacks the basic functionality of choosing a specific colour for your Sim's hair. Sadly, the colour wheel is reserved for dogs, cats and werewolves. In terms of build and buy, again, The Sims 4 is the easiest game to use when building. It's easier than earlier games to move walls, drag things, place things. And with updates, we've had the addition of ponds, curved walls, platforms, free placement of doors and windows, and I'm sure a few more smaller additions that I've missed. Oh, and hot tubs. The main thing I wanted to talk about was gameplay, because that's the most important part of the game. So, at launch, the game didn't have much personality. It didn't have toddlers, it didn't even have a family tree. The only Sims-specific gameplay was whims and emotions. Both were loosely based on the Sims traits, and both were pretty lackluster. Since the launch, we have had a few features added to make Sims more unique. Family trees were patched in so Sims could have relatives. Likes and dislikes were also added so Sims would react to certain things based on their preferences. If a Sim who loves metal music hears it playing, they'll get a positive mood buff and they'll want to mosh out. If they don't like metal music, they'll get a negative mood buff and feel uncomfortable. We also had the addition of wants and fears, so I previously touched on whims. However, whims were pretty useless as they hadn't been updated for years and they felt very shallow, so that's where wants and fears come into it. As a result of a July patch update, Sims were given wants, which look pretty much like whims. I mean, it's pretty much the same thing, the main difference is that wants have been updated to reflect the current gameplay features. Whims were based pretty much on the Sims traits and the situations the Sims were in. Wants do the same thing, but they also take into account likes and dislikes. Fears are a bit more interesting in my opinion. Fears don't get assigned to Sims, they actually only happen after a traumatizing event, which makes Sims' fears feel a lot more unique. Sims who have at some point caught fire may end up having a fear of fire, which means that they're more prone to causing them, and in the face of another fire, they'll have to choose whether to face their fear or run away. Sometimes Sims may never conquer their fears and could take them to the grave, which is something that I really appreciate, considering The Sims 4 is the most rosy-coloured, picture-perfect game. It's nice to at least have some negative consequences. In addition to Sims being able to establish likes and dislikes and wants and fears, they could also have specific experiences with other Sims logged as sentiments. Sentiments ended up being one of my favourite features in the game. They are basically temporary memories that your Sim has with another Sim. You could get negative sentiments like festering grudge and bitter about cheating, if the Sim in question has a romantic connection, and you also had positive sentiments like smitten, cooking together, and closer from happy memories. So we've had a fair bit added in terms of gameplay to make Sims feel more unique. However, we still don't have memories, which was the best bit of the Sims games. I'm still waiting for that one, Sims 4. And so those are a few things that covered what I would consider Sims-specific gameplay. Now let's take a look at other features added in updates that affect what I would consider just general gameplay. The calendar from Seasons was added to base game, and even though there were no festivals or holidays in there, you could still use the calendar to see your Sim's schedule, birthdays, and even plan events. Since my last video on this subject, story progression was added to the game. As the player, you now have complete control over which families are affected by story progression, and you can even set what kind of development you would allow for them. So you might set a certain family free to have a baby, but not free to die in an accident or change jobs. Not only would your Sims carry on living their lives without your input, but the Sims that are associated with your active household will actually consider your thoughts. Your Sim will get phone calls from them asking their opinion on whether they should get to know someone new, go for a new job, or try for a baby. And even if you don't get the phone call, you can still use your Sim to influence other Sims by suggesting things to them, like ask them to pursue their dream job or discuss expanding the family. This update definitely made The Sims 4 feel more alive, and it was quite a big addition to the game. Scenarios were also added to the game, and I think they were pretty good, especially for people who are new to simming and want some kind of storyline to follow. And even for the more experienced players, they can still sometimes have storylines that you may not have thought of. So now we've looked at most of the bigger features added to base game, we can answer that question. Is base game worth it, and can it be enjoyed without add-on content? Considering the changes made and the features added, I honestly think yes. The Sims 4 base game is a pretty good game in my opinion. That doesn't mean it's perfect, and I voiced my opinion several times on my frustration with the add-on content strategy, but for base game, I'm pretty happy with how far The Sims 4 has come. One thing I will say though, is that I think that The Sims 4 is a good game if you look at it as a separate thing from the existing franchise. As a game, I think there's enjoyment that can be had, but it still sadly does not compare to the earlier Sims base games. That doesn't mean it's not good, it just lacks the same level of depth that was put into The Sims 2 and 3. The biggest downfall of The Sims 4, I think, is the potential that it had to not just be good. The Sims 2 and 3 aren't just good games. They are complex, engaging, superior gaming experiences in my opinion, obviously, and The Sims 4 could have been that. And I think that there are still a lot of Simmers who have been around since the beginning who can't quite forgive The Sims 4 for not being the game that we wanted it to be. If The Sims 4 had an editable world map, modes of transportation, negative consequences and less bugs and glitches, it could possibly compare to The Sims 2 and 3. So I guess that's my opinion. The Sims 4 is a good game, it's just not as good as the earlier ones. I would love to know your opinion on this in the comments. Please just bear in mind though that we are talking about base game. I know that there are loads of issues regarding the add-on content for The Sims 4 being buggy and cash grabby, and to be honest that's a separate video in itself. In fact, I'm sure I've made plenty of videos bitching about that. But for now, let's stick to the topic of base game for this video. And that's it from me. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe, you know I love it when you do that. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.